Hi, welcome. Thank you for coming. It's lovely to be here with you today. My name is Katya. I'm a psychotherapist, a yoga psychology teacher, a healer, amongst other things. And I'm here with you today to share one of my big passions, which is how to use yoga to heal the psychological unbalances that we may have in our lives and the emotions that are disturbing us and holding us back from being free and happy, joyful, loving, harmonious human beings. This psychological part of yoga is not very well known, and especially in the West. For me, it's one of the such an important thing about yoga. And we often focus a lot on yoga postures, and we leave out this whole philosophy and psychology of yoga that is so significant in terms of transformation, inner transformation. So even while doing yoga postures, I would do yoga postures for a specific purpose. So let's say that I have an unbalance at the level of the heart. I'm unable to receive love or give love. So that relates to a problem with anahata, the heart chakra, which means that I would do yoga postures to balance that chakra. So everything connects holistically, and to know this part of yoga allows you to maximize what it can do for you. So today I will talk about the psychology of the chakras, which set of emotions relates to each chakra. Also, each chakra relates to certain organs of the body, to the 5 elements, earth, water, fire. Also relates to one of the senses, sense of smell, taste, sight. And so we will discuss each of the chakras and its psychology when it's balanced. How does it translate in terms of our emotions? And when it's unbalanced, what are the consequences? So that you, after today, you are able to recognize, based on your emotions, what are the chakras that you have that are unbalanced, and that will put you in a better position to work on that. I won't go into specific postures that you can do to balance that chakra, because that would be way too big and too much information. So I'll just focus on the psychology of the chakras, essentially. So we'll start with Muladhara chakra, the root chakra, which is located in the perineum area between the anus and the genitals. So Muladhara is related to the element of earth and to the sense of smell. So when this chakra is balanced, we have those emotions that relate to the earth. So the grounding, feeling rooted, being very stable. So if we have that awakened, we feel steady as a rock. So if you have that, you might be the type of person who is not prone to frequent changes. Takes a long time to make a decision, so you consider many options, and then when you actually make that decision, it's a decision for a long, long time, if not a lifetime. So you would be steady, reliable, very patient. So if you've got this chakra very activated, you don't need to be changing all the time. You're like a tree, so quite happy to be rooted in something and just go deeper and deeper into it. Which is why people who have an awakened Muladhara usually achieve some prosperity in life, because they stick to that and deepen it. You would feel safe and secure in the world. You trust that the world is a safe place. You have good, balanced survival instincts. You're not afraid all the time. The ability to have that terrestrial consciousness, that pragmatic awareness, like a cat. What is the environment around me? What is where? How is my body? So that's a material type of awareness. It's related to the qualities of simplicity, harmony, and joy, also to relaxation, to feeling connected with the environment and nature as well. And so, for people who've got really this chakra very activated, they feel like a part of nature. They don't feel separate from that. It's related to the raw physical existence, the body, the instincts, the impulses, the drives, and all of that. It's also related to virility and procreation. So, not so much the pleasure part of sexuality, but the raw procreation instinct. It's also related to physical strength and vitality. So these people have a lot of raw strength. And to physical health and appropriate body weight. So you wouldn't see someone who's balanced at this level be very skinny, for example. They have healthy body proportions and weight, healthy sexual levels, and also energy levels. If, however, the root chakra is unbalanced, the main emotion that people usually feel is fear. So this fear like an existential terror of survival. This feeling that the world is a threatening place, that jungle state of mind, and you might get attacked either physically, emotionally, mentally at any point. This leads to a permanent state of alertness and stress and anxiety. So a restlessness and this preoccupation that is present very often. You can also experience frequent fight, flight, freeze responses, so stress responses, because of that fear. You can experience an excessive concern with self-preservation and individual comfort at the physical level of existence, really prioritizing that as a huge priority. You can experience strong attachment to things because of that comfort, self-centered behaviors, selfish behaviors, and that incapacity to share, just in case there won't be enough. Can also experience greed, financial and material insecurity, hoarding things. And you can experience also persecutory anxieties leading to projections. So, for example, imagining that the other person is thinking about hurting us or doing something malicious to us. When they're actually just maybe admiring our hair. And in extreme cases, this could lead to things like hypochondria, paranoia, schizophrenia, obsessive compulsive behaviors, and also eating disorders, for example. Another element is the lack of grounding, disconnection from home, from primary relationships, from nature, from society norms. So this is a lack of roots of any type. So the person feels rootless, not really connected to anything, like an existential disconnection. One can experience this raw aggressiveness to defend primordial needs. Also a state of inertia, chronic fatigue even in more extreme cases, or just laziness, not wanting or having the energy to do anything. It's also, because it's related to earth, when it's unbalanced, it can lead to rigidity, so incapacity to change or to adjust. One can also experience a lack of patience and perseverance, and some sexual dysfunctions are also related to this. So on a physical level, Muladhara, the root chakra, relates to the adrenal glands, the coccygeal plexus, muscles, bones, hip joints, immune system, bladder, rectum, hips, elimination system, large intestine mainly, And it also shares responsibility over the prostate, kidneys, and genitals. And in terms of yoga postures, I won't go into specific yoga postures, but I can share that the postures of this chakra usually relate to the elongation and compression of the sacral area, whether centrally or from the front or back or laterally. So this is the first chakra. The second chakra is called Svadhisthana chakra, and it's located a few centimeters above the genitals. And again, well, some traditions have different perspectives around the exact location of the chakras. I'll just share this because some consider, for example, one chakra the main chakra, and then a little bit above that, for example, a sub-chakra, and other traditions will say, no, the main Svadhisthana chakra is the one that's above that, and the lower one is the sub-chakra. So they all agree that they are chakras related to the same chakra, but not necessarily which is the main one. So don't be too worried about the location if you hear two different locations for a chakra, for example. Because even if you were to meditate on the sub-chakra, it would still activate the main chakra. So Svadhisthana is the sacral chakra. It relates to the element of water, and it also relates to the sense of taste. So this element of water, when it comes to balanced emotions, it brings the fluidity, the adaptability, the flexibility, and even in social situations, it allows us to be pleasant to others, to interact, to blend in, to adapt to new people. It's also related to the pursuit of connection and the desire to merge with others, the enjoyment of the senses, the pursuit of what feels good. You would feel at the level of this chakra, if you've got it, for example, as a predominant chakra, you'd feel very attracted to anything that feels good, and you would reject things that don't feel good. Pursuit of pleasure, you might experience an interest in fashion or social arrangements or social roles or fame or politics. And it's also about the senses, what's enjoyable, it's the things that stimulate our senses in a pleasurable way. When this is balanced, people can experience also an effortless state of cheerfulness, also connected to physical self-care and balance in terms of food, sleep, and sexual activity even, because it's related also to sensuality and sexuality. It's also related to movement, bodily expression, and it's related, just like the element of water, there's a high capacity for change. People who are very active at this level are usually very graceful, both emotionally and physically, in terms of the way that they move, can be very gentle and harmonious. Creativity is also associated with this chakra. And people who have it activated, they can be very interesting, easygoing, and approachable, imaginative. And this chakra is also related to healing and to regeneration. When it's unbalanced, the second chakra, Svadhisthana, can relate to unhealthy attachments and toxic dependence between people, to insecurities and jealousy, but a jealousy that is related more to sexual intimacy, whereas jealousy is also an unbalance of the heart chakra, but that's more of a jealousy of emotional connection with others. Also related to social envy, to possessiveness, to being controlling, manipulative, to obsession, suspicion. People can feel overly emotional, dysregulated, just overwhelmed, agitated, confused, forgetful. One of the main experiences emotionally at this level when it's unbalanced, it's frustration. People feeling very frustrated, just dissatisfied. And this is because usually one draws pleasure from something external, and instead of getting the pleasure from our being and connecting with others in a deep spiritual way, we can do that at the level of Svadhisthana on a very superficial way. So we draw pleasure from things, from getting the next phone, and then, but also that is satisfactory for a very short time, and then it's not very satisfactory anymore. So we're after the next thing, the next new phone, the next game, the next whatever. So it leads to also addictions, because we need to keep satisfied. Also related to mood swings, psychological outbursts, to martyrdom, to impaired social skills, social anxiety, this craving for social validation, and at this level we can be too much of a people pleaser. So instead of being grounded in who we are, we try to be someone else. So there's often a difference and a struggle between our inner world and our outer world, because they don't match. We can develop an excessive concern for self-image and other people's opinions, whether they're judging us, and trying to maintain this desired perception so that we can keep having pleasure from everything and everyone. Well, if the water element is missing, we also have a lack of fluidity, that softness and flexibility, both psychological and also physically. So there might be a rigidity in the body and movement. And also there may be sexual disturbances, like too much sexuality that's out of control, trying to manipulate or exploit others sexually, inhibitions, rigidity. And also there can be irresponsible behaviors and unconsciousness at this level quite a bit. On a physical level, Svadhisthana, the second chakra, relates to the sexual glands, meaning the ovaries or the testicles, sacral plexus, the uterus, vagina, cervix, then pelvis, lower vertebrae, appendix, and upper intestine. And this chakra also shares responsibility over the kidneys and digestive organs. In terms of postures for this chakra, it relates to hip stretches and also to postures that elongate the pelvic area. Then we have Manipura chakra. So this is the chakra that we have in our belly. Some people say that it's in the sacral, on the solar plexus, and some people say that it's a bit just around the navel. So this is the navel chakra, and it's related to the element of fire and to the capacity for eyesight. So this fire, when it's balanced, it brings emotions like willpower, to have that inner power, the ability to influence others. Often people who have this activated, they have positions of leadership and authority, and they're often very charismatic. They lead by example and by inspiration. This chakra is connected to drive and determination to commit to whatever decisions that we make, because this is no longer about just doing what's nice and feels pleasurable. This is about doing what's right, or what feels right. It's also very action driven. It's fire, so it's related to transformation. It's related to self-agency, that ability to stand our ground and to know who we are and act from that. To have a well-defined personality, which is often magnetic and extroverted. The type of people who are predominant on this chakra and balanced are the people who come into a room and they can't go by unnoticed. So they have this aura around them of just strength. They have good sense of self-worth, self-esteem, self-confidence that don't relate to external things, so they can't really be shaken that much, because it's, if you have this very balanced within you, you know who you are, you know what you stand for, and you know, you question yourself because of the psychological work, but at the end of the day, you're quite grounded in yourself and able to stand in your own truth. And this leaves us free from other people's opinions or social constructs, or all those things. So it's also related to autonomy and independence, and to a sense of honor and pride, to low shame and inhibitions, to having attitudes that are clear and firm, very assertive and diligent, and it's an energy that moves things forward, that creates things in the world. So from the fire comes the capacity for change and to adapt to new life circumstances, and to be resourceful, but also to have self-discipline and self-control. Fire is also related to passion and intensity, also to spontaneity, to be dynamic, often to have goals, very clear goals that move the person forward. It's very good for personal growth and self-improvement, and it's an energy that is very strong, so it's spontaneously generated. When we need to manifest some vitality, we just draw from that and we carry on. And we can experience this mental energy, which makes us able to overcome laziness and procrastination and just do things that need to be done. So it's related to also strength and courage, and to also to humor and laughter and playfulness. And people who've got this very activated are often strong defenders of justice and providers of charity and protectors of others. When this chakra is unbalanced, however, we can experience, one of the big emotions that we experience is anger. So a lot of anger, aggressiveness, rage, conflict. Also anxiety is another big one. We can experience distorted power dynamics, feeling either very powerful or feeling completely powerless. So we can feel like the one who controls and dominates and abuses, provokes, manipulates. So that kind of having strength and power over someone else. Can also relate to feelings of superiority, such as arrogance and entitlement, feeling like you're better than others. But also sometimes it's the opposite. So feeling that you're worse than others, you're undeserving, and all that. Stubbornness, selfishness, recklessness, having a ruthless independence that is unrealistic, victimization, lack of courage, self-doubt, being completely dependent on others, shame, self-neglect, deficiency in self-esteem and self-confidence, and an incapacity to assert strong internal values. One can feel shy and introvert and isolated and withdrawn, not able to be strong in social situations. We can experience lack of boundaries, so the incapacity to say no, which makes us vulnerable to abuse. Ambitiousness, competitiveness to unhealthy degrees. Praise seeking, just wanting to conquer social status or business positions or things like that to compensate for the low self-esteem and those internal states of not being good enough. So the lack of self-discipline and self-control, an inability to change and to transform or make decisions or adapt, being very passive, not being able to follow through, self-sabotage and low motivation are also characteristics of unbalances of the third chakra, the navel chakra. So in terms of physical organs, it relates to the adrenal glands, pancreas, and the solar plexus. Also the digestive system, the skin, parts of the breath, the upper abdomen, diaphragm, middle of the spine, and small intestines. It also holds shared influence of the kidneys. And postures for Manipura include endurance postures and also twists, and postures that involve the compression and elongation of the abdominal organs. So then we have Anahata chakra, the heart chakra, which is located at the level of the heart. It is related to the element of air and located to the sense of touch. Anahata relates when it's balanced. It relates to the emotions of unconditional love, of heart-to-heart connections. People who have this very awakened are usually very lovely. You see them and you just want to, they have really close connections that are very warm and affectionate and fraternal and very caring and profoundly intimate, but in a non-sexual way. Empathy also is a characteristic at this level. Being able to be rather than to do. Emotional maturity, a sense of meaning, nurturing others, having complete access to the range of emotions and to our own vulnerability, compassion, and the ability to be a silent witness, so to remain calm when things around us are very emotional. Being able to empathize with the wounded parts of people instead of reacting to their defenses and their egos. This chakra is also related to reconciliation of opposite forces or opposite feelings or aspects of ourselves. So, for example, we might have feelings of I hate this person and feelings of I love this person, the same person, and both exist at the same time. And it's at the level of Anahata that we can integrate that into something integrated and holistic that doesn't involve duality. We feel a very deep state of inner peace and harmony and joy when this is active and balanced. There's a selflessness, altruism, rising above the I and transcending the ego and being there for others, being of service, acceptance of others, not being judgmental. One can experience wanting to live in communities or communal ways of living, cooperating with others. Ability to surrender, devotion also. There's an emotional gentleness and sweetness that can have towards others. Nobility, being very uplifting and inspirational to others. And to also be able to appreciate others, appreciate the world, not just seeing the world as normal, but seeing it as extraordinary rather than ordinary. And this is through appreciating things that we would possibly take for granted otherwise. When this chakra is unbalanced, then we might experience emotions such as a sense of aloneness and separateness, the inability to feel like we are connected to others and to the world. We might feel imprisoned by egos or desires or things that are provoked by the lower chakras. This sense of meaninglessness and hopelessness, purposelessness, being without aim, not knowing what to do with life. It's also related to emotional insecurity and fear of rejection or abandonment, related to putting up defenses around emotional intimacy. Depending on whether it's unbalanced at the yin or yang level, this may result in an inability to receive love or to give love, or both. Person can appear cold and distant, can feel jealous, that jealousy of emotional intimacy. Lack of self-love is also a big thing at the level of this chakra, because for many people it's easy to love others, comes naturally, harder to love ourselves, and to even just treat ourselves the same as others, instead of putting ourselves down or being too critical or demanding too much, too high expectations, etc. So one can have disregard for our own feelings, not taking them into consideration. A lack of emotional boundaries, so resulting in relationships where there are toxic codependency and emphasis on the other is out of balance, whether we put too much emphasis on the other or too much emphasis on self, and there's no balance there. Emotional abuse, emotional manipulation, also emotional hypersensitivity, confusion around feelings, ability to reconcile different feelings, dissociation between mind and emotions, so not being able to understand how we feel or connect with that, or just feeling indifferent emotionally, or having superficial access to emotions and not having the depth there. Being emotionally selfish, self-preoccupied, not having consideration for others, considering only one's feelings as the referential, not really thinking about how it might be for others or what others might feel when we say a particular thing or act in a particular way. Not accepting ourselves or not accepting others, not being able to forgive. Also martyrdom, the absence of fulfillment. There's also deep loneliness that comes from not really feeling connected to others, this kind of painful longing and sadness and grief. And sometimes that goes as far back as that inner child, a wounded inner child that we carry with us because of past traumas and things like that. In terms of our physical body, Anahata, the heart chakra, relates to the thymus, the pulmonary and cardiac plexus. So the heart, circulation, blood, lungs, rib cage, breasts, shoulders, arms, and hands. And it also shares responsibility over the diaphragm and the esophagus. Postures for the heart chakra involve the extension of the chest, whether frontally, sideways, or even through the back. Then we have Vishuddha chakra, which is the throat chakra. And this relates to the element of ether. And ether is, I would describe it as the canvas in which all the other elements will then come to create reality. So it's really what's behind reality and the reason why reality can exist. In terms of the senses, it's related to the sense of hearing. And when it's balanced, this chakra relates a lot to intuition, also to the expansion beyond the limits of individuality and into a greater whole. Also the experience of unity and interconnectedness of the whole universe, because of course if you can feel the ether, you can also feel that, it just connects everything. So people who have this chakra activated and balanced usually can find a way to live in tune with the universal current of life, which leads to experiencing synchronicities quite often. And they can align themselves with the internal and external natural rhythms. So like the circadian cycles, biological cycles, menstrual seasons, the moon, astrological cycles, and all that. We also have direct access to universal archetypes, mysteries, and the collective unconsciousness, unconscious. And archetypes are like blueprints of existence. For example, female archetypes, you might have the wild woman, which is raw and wild, and you might have, for example, the goddess, which is, cosmic and elevated. So just different aspects that exist in people and in the universe. So through Vishuddha Chakra, we have access to those archetypes and that wisdom. This chakra is also very much related to communication, to a clear, persuasive, melodious expression of fundamental truths, deep truths of the universe. It's also related to an inspirational creativity, channeling that wisdom through words, singing, music, rhythm, art, beauty, or anything. Also an openness to active listening, openness to superior guidance and divine grace that comes through the intuition, and so we are like a vehicle for that to be channeled into the world. Common sense is also related to this chakra. So people who don't have this very active or balanced, they can be very clueless in terms of common sense, and everyone else has picked up specific hints or what's happening, and they're still a bit out of the loop in terms of what should happen, what's expected, and those sorts of things. It's related to sixth sense, so a perceptiveness of the energy behind things or the essence of objects or people. So this is because of, again, that ether element. It's also related to purity, and it relates to an aspiration towards higher states of consciousness, and which leads to a state of harmony and plenitude. When this chakra is unbalanced, the third chakra, we can experience specific emotions, namely to have problems or impairments in communication, so the inability to speak or to express, or have disorganized, chaotic speech or disharmonious expressions, or to have detrimental or superficial uses of communication, so gossiping or disregarding others or loudness, or even speech problems, such as stuttering or things like that can have to do with unbalances of this chakra. One can experience the inability to listen, either intuitively or physically or interpersonally. No access to the sixth sense, or compromised access to the sixth sense or the collective unconsciousness or common sense. Because of the purity element, one can experience the bitterness for everything that is not perfect and this state of disappointment in the world. Judgment also, withdrawal, so detachment and rejection of the outside world. So people would just go away and withdraw and just be by themselves, like a tendency to deny life. Or it can lead to a state of metaphysical concern about the state of the world and all that. An inability to perceive the interconnectedness of things, an impairment in different types of connection, for example, between the body and the mind, or internal parts of the self, or external connections, a lack of inspiration, a separation from the environment, a sense of futility, for example, because one could prioritize superficial matters over spiritual matters, and an impaired access to creativity and artistic expression and those things that come through the intuition. So Vishuddha chakra relates to specific organs, physical organs, namely the thyroid and parathyroid glands, the pharyngeal plexus, the neck, the ears, the mouth, the trachea, vocal cords, the cervical vertebrae, and the esophagus, and the upper shoulders. And postures for this chakra usually relate to the compression and elongation, or the twist of the neck. Then we have Agya chakra, or people say it differently in different places of India and of the world. Some people say Ajna chakra. I'll call it Agya chakra, which is how I've learned it. And this is located in the forehead. Some traditions say it's in the middle of the forehead, some traditions say it's in the third eye. So in English, we typically call this the third eye chakra. And when it's balanced, so I won't talk about the five elements anymore, or the senses anymore, because the chakras from here onwards, they relate to like higher dimensions, so they're no longer related to the physical aspects that much. So in terms of emotions, when it's balanced, this chakra relates to mental capacities such as intelligence and discernment and insight, meaning making, memory. One could have direct access to the subconscious, which is very useful when you're on the path and trying to be more self-aware and knowledgeable about yourself and your dynamics. You can have access to dreams, also an ability to understand complexity, an ability to have a detached awareness, like an objective lucidity, a clarity around things. Ability to see reality from a big picture perspective, lateral thinking, the ability to be or to set ourselves free from the conditionings of the past, or the personality or society or the environment around us. It's also related to intuition, but it's the kind of intuition that it's like a direct access to universal truths and how the universe works. It's connected with the understanding of concepts and generalizations and universal laws, pattern, logic, principles. Connected with the ability to conceptualize, work with abstract, symbolic concepts or ideas, to synthesize. And the ability to apply judgment based on higher principles. Ability to make links between emotions and the lessons behind them, and facts of life and the lessons behind them. So the ability for self-reflection, self-awareness, introspection also. And the ability to explore complex, non-linear connections. So this happened, something entirely different happened, and it's all because of some underlying current or teaching or lesson that's happening. And also in conjunction with Anahata, the heart chakra, these two govern emotional intelligence. When this chakra is unbalanced, one can experience impaired mental capacities, such as lack of memory, concentration, discernment, mental clarity, objectivity, intelligence, awareness, insight, lateral thinking. One can experience a lot of mental chatter, like an agitated mind, or ignorance, confusion, chaotic thinking, obsessive thinking, those kinds of things. Also, an impairment in the ability to work with abstract concepts and ideas, or to apply judgment based on higher principles. Also, to have these illogic, contradictory actions that are just incoherent. Low self-awareness, self-reflection, introspection, and meaning-making. Distorted perceptions, so perceptions that are clouded by the lack of insight and ego and conditionings. Delusions, hallucinations, a lack of self-confidence at a psychic level, and vulnerability to manipulation, blind faith, and compromising things that don't make sense. Having little or no access to the subconscious, including dreams, and low emotional intelligence. So, Agya chakra relates in terms of physical organs and the body. It relates to the pineal gland and the carotid plexus. And also the neurological system, the eyes, the sinuses, and the hypothalamus. It also shares influence over the brain, ears, nose, and pituitary gland. So some traditions say that Agya relates to the pineal gland, and Sashara relates to the pituitary, and some traditions will say the opposite. So, and then in terms of postures good that are balancing for Agya chakra, the third eye, consist of inversions. And by this I mean postures where you have your head below your heart. And also balancing postures and resting postures. And then lastly, we have Sashara chakra. So in English called the crown chakra. And this is located on the top of the head, a little bit towards the back. This chakra, some traditions don't even call it a chakra because there's no duality at this level, unlike the other chakras that have yin and yang. So the emissive and the receptive sides of the chakra, each side with its own unbalances. But Sashara is really, it's non-dualistic. So it's really like a portal into a higher state of consciousness. So when it's balanced, we can experience that universal consciousness, that cosmic consciousness. It's related to spirituality, divinity, being able to experience the sacredness of the whole universe. It's associated with that state of enlightenment and self-realization, oneness. It relates to the expansion of the consciousness beyond the limits of the body and the mind and the universe. It relates to a deep inner wisdom that's experiential, so understanding the mysteries of the universe, being detached from problems. So at this level, the ego, the little problems in life seem very small, because we can experience the universe as a whole. and we can experience, for example, the earth as a living organism, and to be able to feel all that rather than be so focused on why did that person talk to me this morning in that way. And if we think about it, we are, even if we just get on an airplane, we notice how very, very small we are. And if we zoom out even more from that, we can see how the Earth even itself, it's small. And if we go to a galaxy level, and if we go to bigger than that, so we're very, very small in all that. But things feel very important. So through being connected through Sashhara into that universal consciousness, we can put things more into perspective. So there's a lightness that comes from that. So problems don't really seem that important, and they're contextualized in that big picture. We gain at this level a planetary perspective. So this is often linked with causes like humanitarian causes, sustainable living, conscious communities, evolution of the species. Because at this level we understand that it's not one life, human life, that is going to shift the consciousness of the universe. It's by evolving together, evolving our consciousness together. So there's a connection with the universal spirit from a broad perspective, non-individualistic, and a sense of universal harmony and bliss, and this freedom that comes from the liberation from the limitations of the ego. When Sashhara, the crown chakra, is unbalanced, we may experience an unhealthy relationship with spirituality. So examples are a cynicism or an obsession with spirituality or with even religion, spiritual disconnection, a fear of death or of anything spiritual, or spiritual pride, or very rigid belief systems. We can experience a disconnection from our own body and from our soul and from existence in general. We can experience an existential crisis, living like a life of apathy and no joy. Experience this lack of consciousness and wisdom, lack of universal perspective, being attached to superficial things, and taking things personally and being problematic, and a state of meaninglessness, a lack of trust in a higher purpose, a lack of understanding of how, like what's behind everything, and having a more narrow perspective on life. In terms of physical body, Sashhara relates to the pituitary gland, and, well, in other traditions they say it's the pineal, and also the cerebral cortex. So it governs the skull, the brainstem, the cranial nerves, the cranial plexus, and the nervous system. And so it shares responsibility over the brain. And postures that relate to this chakra are postures where the head is downwards, in line with the spine. So this was a relatively summarized version of the chakras, their psychology, the type of postures that could balance the chakras, and the physical organs that relate to each chakra, as well as the element that relates to each chakra and the sense that relates to that chakra. I hope that wasn't a huge amount of information for you to absorb all of a sudden. I don't expect anyone to memorize all of this, but perhaps if you could relate to some of these things and identify some of the chakras that you have unbalanced, then that is a good start, because from that point you can start to group some of your issues as part of an unbalance of a particular chakra, and that places you in a better position to make links, and also eventually potentially to create a yoga asana practice of postures that will help you balance that chakra. I wouldn't do this unsupervised, meaning it is a very powerful practice to use postures to heal particular emotions. It is very powerful. It can have very strong results. And I'm very passionate about this topic. This was even the topic of my thesis in university, and it's very powerful but also very dangerous. It can shift you completely. It can open your heart and you experience incredible states of bliss and connection with others. But also, let's say that you start working on, say, the navel chakra, which is related to willpower and self-esteem and all that. But before you get a chance to balance it, you just activate it a lot. You can experience incredible states of anger and pride and ego and things like that. So I recommend some guidance if you want to use yoga practice of asana to complement your psychological or spiritual journey and help you with that. It's brilliant. I would recommend doing it with some guidance of an experienced yoga psychology or yoga teacher who is familiar with those areas, and to help you through that. And overall, I hope that you've managed to hear a bit more about what yoga is, and that it's not just postures, that there's a whole psychology and philosophies around that, and that it has a lot of teachings that can benefit you in different ways than just the physical. Because at the end of the day, maybe we do 1 hour physical posture a day, but the day has another 23 hours in which we can totally screw up all the good energies that we created during the practice. So ideally, if we can practice 24 hours a day yoga, in which 1 hour might be in the yoga mat and the other 23 hours are us working on themselves psychologically, then that's really perfect. So I wish you amazing things for your journey, a lot of healing and a lot of love and peace, and namaste.